Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Joel Hancock, and I'm the product manager for Seeking Alpha Premium. Today's webinar is going to focus on our stock screener and our ETF screener, and I'm going to demonstrate a couple of different ways that you can get value out of this feature. So I'm going to start with the stock screener. And if you're on our website and you look at this left rail, there's a link here at the bottom that says top stocks. And there is a top ETFs link, a stock screener link, and an ETF screener link. And I'm going to go through each of these and explain how to use them. So to start out with, in the stock screener, there are really two ways to engage with our stock screener. And the first way is to use the screens that have already been built by our team at Seeking Alpha. The most popular of those screens is the top rated stock screen, which you see is this link on the left, top stocks. And what this represents is a screen that is taking the three ratings that we offer at Seeking Alpha, the quant rating, the Seeking Alpha analyst rating, and the Wall Street rating, and is filtering our entire universe of stocks that we cover for buy and strong buys across all three of those ratings. And as a quick reminder, the Wall Street analyst rating is the aggregate, the average rating across all Wall Street analysts that cover a particular stock. The Seeking Alpha analyst rating is the same, but for Seeking Alpha analysts. And the quant rating is our objective rating system that runs every day of the year, where we evaluate stocks on the 5 factors that I show below: valuation, growth, profitability, momentum, and earnings revisions. And then each stock is rated against every other stock in the same sector. And that's how we calculate the aggregate quant rating. So this screener is designed to show stocks that meet the criteria of at least a buy rating for all three of those groups, all three of those ratings. So if I click done here, we're going to see that as of today, there are 55 results that meet that criteria. And below in this tab, there are several different tabs here of all kinds of data about those stocks. So if you want to look at performance, you can click on this performance tab and you can see how each item, each row in the list has performed over the last month, over the last 6 months, year to date, etc. You can look at additional details around the quant factors like valuation. So you have like PE ratio, PEG ratio, price to book. You can look at growth metrics, revenue growth, earnings growth. You can look at momentum, price versus the moving averages. You can look at ownership. You can look at risk. You can look at debt. And you can look at all of these things combined for this whole set of stocks. So I think the easiest way to get started with our screener is to use these pre-built screens. I started with top-rated stocks, but there are actually a whole list of pre-built screens, and you can access all of those in 2 different ways. You can click this little arrow, this drop-down, and this is going to show you the full list, the name of the screen, and how many current results there are for that screen. Or you can click on the stock screener link, and you can view a list, which is the same list that I was just showing you, but it also includes this description that offers a little bit more detail about what goes into each screen. So one of the ways that you can really get a lot out of this is to combine the ratings data, which, for instance, the quant rating is unique to Seeking Alpha, but you can combine that with other factors that you might care about or that might fit your investing style or your goals. So I'll give you an example here. If I'm interested in technology stocks, we have a top technology stock screen. I'm going to go in here I'm going to look at the filters. Okay, so we're looking at the sector of information technology. I'm going to set the quant rating. I'm only interested in stocks that are rated as a buy. So I'll set this. But then there might be other factors that I care about. For instance, I might only want stocks that have a really high growth rating. So if I click on advanced filters, you're going to see we have all these different categories. These are quite similar to the tabs that I demonstrated earlier, but you can look in each of these categories and you can find all the different metrics that you can use to filter. So I am going to go into the factor grades, quant factor grades. I'm going to add the growth factor. And let's say I also want to find stocks that have maybe been overlooked. And so they haven't had great performance for this year. They have great growth. They have a strong quant rating, but they haven't seen that performance. So I can additionally go into the performance category and let's say year-to-date performance. And over here on the right, you can see every filter that I've added to this screen. So once you're satisfied with this list, you can click done. And now you can go in here and you can set these values to what you're looking for. So for instance, I mentioned that I was interested in stocks that had a really high growth grade. So I'm going to set this to A or A plus. And then in terms of performance, let's say I only am interested in stocks that have up to 8% price performance in the year 2023. So once I've changed these filters, every time I'm changing these, by the way, if you'll notice that this results number is updating. And so if you add a lot of different filters, sometimes you can kind of filter out too many things and there are no results. But you can, every time I adjust this, it updates this number, so you can kind of keep track of how many stocks are fit the criteria that you're setting. So I'm going to put this back, and it looks like we have 8 results. So I'm going to click done. And here I have this list of 8 stocks that fit the criteria that I set. And from this point, there's a couple different things you can do. If this is a set of filters that you want to continue to look at, if you want to come back and look at this tomorrow, or if you want to come back and look at this a week from now or a month from now, you can click this Save As button and you can create your own screen. So we started with a screen that was created by Seeking Alpha, but we'll say Joel's Growth Tech Stocks. And then in the description, you can put something that'll just remind you what this is. You can put the names of the filters. You can put really whatever is going to help you remember. And so I'm going to click Save As. And now what this does is it allows you to come back to this screen by either going into this stock screener link. You can see this is the screen that I just created. Or if you're on an existing screen, you can find it in this drop down. So once I have those 8 stocks, if those are stocks that I am interested in following and I want to receive analysis, news, alerts about those stocks, I can also add them to a portfolio by clicking this plus portfolio button on the far right. So if I click this is the list of stocks that we just looked at. And if I hit done, it's going to create a portfolio and add it to your list of portfolios in the left rail. The other thing you can do is if you want to do additional analysis, or if you want to look at all the different factors, you can download this to a spreadsheet, or you can create a link and you can share it with other premium subscribers. So that is kind of how you modify an existing screener. The second thing you can do is if you have an idea, if you have a specific idea that you want to explore and you want to find stocks that fit those criteria, you can go to the stock screener page and you can create your own screener. So if I go back to stock screener, and I click create new screen, we pre-populate 5 different fields here, but you certainly don't need to keep those. If you hover above any of these fields and you see this little red X, you can remove these filters. So I'll just remove a couple of these. We'll take that out, and we'll take this out. And suppose the idea that you want to look into is you want to find dividend stocks that are unlikely to have a dividend cut in the near future, but also have a, let's say, a forward yield greater than 5%. So what I can do is I'm going to keep this quant rating because I do want to use that as a factor here. I'm going to set it to buy to strong buy. And then I'm going to go into advanced filters, and I'm going to go to the dividend grade section. And one of the things that I care about is that the ability of a company to continue to pay its dividend. And we have this quant factor, it's called dividend safety, that provides that information. So I'm going to add dividend safety. And the other thing that I care about is the forward yield. So I'm going to go to the dividend section. I'm going to add forward yield, and then I'm going to click done. So now you can see I have these 3 filters. I'm going to go to dividend grades. I'm going to say I want it to be an A or A plus. And then in forward yield, I think I said I wanted 5% or more. So I'll go in here. I'll set this. You can actually type in this box, by the way, also. You can either use the slider, or if you know an exact number, you can type it in there yourself. And I can see here that there are 5 stocks in our universe that fit those 3 criteria: a quant rating of buy or greater, a dividend safety rating of A or A plus, and a dividend yield greater than 5%. So I'm going to click done, and this is going to return the 5 stocks that fit that criteria. And from that point, you can either save this as a screen that you want to return to, or you can create a portfolio out of these stocks, or you can download these into a spreadsheet if you want to do further manipulation. So those are kind of the 2 primary ways that you can get a lot of value out of our stock screener. And what I'm going to go to next is the ETF screener. And the ETF screener, in terms of how to use it, it's going to be very similar. There are a couple differences that I'll point out, but let me just start by going to our top ETFs pre-built screen. So the ETF screener also has several screens that were created by Seeking Alpha, and you can access those by going into this drop-down and selecting one of them, or by going to the ETF screener link. And then here's the full list with a little bit of additional information about each screen. So going back to top ETFs, let's look at what's going on here. So, okay, so there's only 2 filters that I have set here. The first one is fund type, and the second one is quant rating. And quant rating it's very similar to what we use the same quant system that we use for stocks for ETFs. However, we do use different factors for ETFs than we use for stocks. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But the other really important thing that I want to point out is this fund types. So if I click in this drop down, there's 4 different types of securities that are covered in the ETF filter. And right now it's set to just stock and bond ETFs. You can also add leveraged ETFs. You can add inverse ETFs, and you can add ETNs if you want to broaden the universe here. So I'll just do that real quick. And you can see now I have 517 results that have a quant rating of buy or strong buy. And from here, I can add some additional filters. For instance, let me go into, okay, so going back to what I was saying about the quant rating. Earlier we discussed for stocks what the 5 factors are. The ETF factors are different and they're listed under this rating section: momentum, expenses, dividends, risk, and liquidity. And so if you want to find ETFs that have a very high factor momentum grade, you can select that. If you care about expenses, you can select that. But you can also select other factors that are non-quant related, like year-to-date performance, the number of holdings, dividend related factors, momentum factors, risk factors, any of those. So like here's one for short interest, if that's something that you're interested in. And so once you've kind of decided on which additional filters you want to add here, like for instance, let's look at performance and let's take year-to-date performance. So we'll add that. And we have the 517 ETFs. Let's say I want to find ETFs that have had really, we'll say above, we'll put 10%. Okay. So now there's 408 ETFs that fit that criteria. So, okay, so maybe I'll think, all right, well, maybe I'll take this to 15%. Okay, and now we're down to 318. I'll click done, and I can view this list. I can add additional filters if there are specific sectors or specific factors that you want to consider and that you want to weight more strongly. You can add those as well. And once you've kind of landed, well, actually, let me go in here and see what else we can do. So let's go back to ratings, and let's say one of the really important things to keep in mind for ETFs are the expenses, because that is going to reduce your performance. ETFs that have a very high expense ratio mean you need that much more performance to get into a positive return. So let me add expenses. I'm going to click done, and then I'm going to go back here. And okay, and so expenses, it is one of our quant factors for ETFs. So I can simply say, let's say we only want A and A plus. And what that means is lower expenses, basically. So if like an ETF that has a expense factor grade of an F is going to be a more expensive ETF or ETN, and an ETF or ETN that has an expense grade of A or A plus is going to have a lower cost. So now I'm saying A or A plus. I'll click done, and now I'm down to 64 different ETFs that fit that criteria. From there, you can go into each of these tabs and you can look at all the different kind of, we have RSI, we have highs and lows, we have volume. We also, back on this summary tab, we have AUM, which can be something that you want to consider. You might want a highly liquid ETF or ETN, so you want to make sure that that AUM is above a certain threshold, and you can add that as a filter as well. Once you've added all the factors you want and you have a list of ETFs that you want to research further or that you want to track, you can use that plus portfolio button, which is going to create a portfolio out of those 64 ETFs so that you can continue to get updates on these and you can see how the grades change. Or you can export it to Excel, or you can just save this this screen. I'll do that. So I'll say ETF TNs. And what that does is it allows you to come back to this. All of our metrics update every day. So I can come back to this a week from now and see if there are a few more results or a few less results that fit that criteria. And it's really like a great tool for finding like new ETF or stock ideas. So with that, those are kind of the primary ways to use our screeners. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions about this or any feedback or any features that you'd love for us to add to the stock screener or the ETF screener, please email us at product@seekingalpha.com. So that's product, PRODUCT, seekingalpha.com. Thank you.